after waiting for 2 business days. There were finally enough players to create the server. I started scouring the map, searching to find a nation to play as. Due to me being on mobile, my butterfingers keep brushing on nations, making it annoying to move around as it keeps blocking my screen. But then I finally found it. The perfect nation. Mecklenburg. Yes, the cannon fodder Mecklenburg, the Prussian railway to West Germany. The Teutons had already began invading Wolgiast, so I had to be smart. I reduced wealth tax for political power and increased poverty for revenue. I continued my laws, made rivals out of neutral states, and gained profit from the Danish Lübeck. Then I decided it was time for war. I tried to make a claim on the remaining Wolgast province. But I had already used up my political power-making decisions, so I just recruited soldiers instead till I had enough PP. By the time my troops were ready, I had enough PP to claim the province, then war justification. I declared war and sent in my troops and then left to observe the Teutons. Not weird or anything. I checked out Hamburg for some reason, and then went back. I asked the Teutons if they needed help. An attempt to better relations. He said no, and I asked him if I could take Stettin, which he also said no for. He asked me why I'm playing Mecklenburg, but I gave him the silent treatment, since I was too Sigma. I decreased autonomy on one province, and then started recruiting soldiers for the Great Western Conquests. I knew what my targets were, Saxe, Lauenburg, and Lüneburg. I made claims on them, but then I realized a claim on Lübeck was actually cheap. I was racking up expenses with the military. Good thing I put everything on taxation. I zoomed out of the map and checked the player map mode to see how much ops we could get. When I did finally have enough PP, I didn't hesitate to make a claim on Lübeck. I started a war justification against them, hoping no one would interfere. I sent in my troops to capture Lübeck, then suddenly my friend Denmark started mass recruiting from every province. I was cooked. The only way to survive was to negotiate. I turned on Mega Negotiator mode and tried to convince them not to attack. We came to an agreement that he would buy Lübeck from me and pay 10 gold each year for 20 years. The capture of Lübeck was taking a really long time. The Teutons took the opportunity and cut me off from southern states. This is bad. I was fearful of Prussian invasion. It was time for a security check. My only ally was Denmark, and theirs was me. But the Prussians were allies with Sweden, who is also enemies with Denmark and is pretty strong. I recruited more troops to reinforce the ones in Lübeck. They wouldn't make the capture faster, they were just there to keep it a constant rate. The invasion was taking a while. When the siege of Lübeck was over, my dumb decided to only take money. Remember, Denmark already said they would buy it from me, which would have made me more money. I kept my military on standby because I knew I had to find a way through the Prussian border block. I checked my claims again to make sure I had them. Then I went to check out what the Prussians were doing and why they didn't continue their German expansion. Apparently they had beef with Lithuania and were even at a truce, meaning war had ended. Now this was bad, since if I invade Lüneburg, they will most likely retaliate. I recruited a little bit more troops and then justified war on Lüneburg. If Prussia decides to invade me, and I will start Plan B, which is negotiation. I sent my army into Lüneburg, then waited a bit. And just as I predicted, Prussia justified a war goal on me, and I knew I couldn't win even with Denmark. Now Plan B was in phase. My negotiation was offering to become a vassal if he spared me, but he swiftly declined the offer. Dang, that hurt. Denmark accepted my call to arms, which was unexpected. Knowing there was a chance of Sweden joining, I accepted the peace deal to save Denmark. Now it was all over. I had less than I started with. I knew I had to migrate somewhere else. But where? The Americas. But I didn't have an Atlantic coast, which was a requirement. So I chose to invade Verdun in hopes of getting there. I started the invasion, going through Danish and Prussian land to avoid ship expenses. The Prussians obviously wouldn't like this, but we were at a truce, so they couldn't do anything. The Prussians began aggression with the Danish, who were still sieging Lübeck. Verdun wasn't enough for me, so I made claims on more northern German states. This was to make more income to have enough money for colonization. Denmark tried to negotiate with the Prussians, who turned them down without hesitation. I made more rivals, to at least save my prestige debuffs with power display. Denmark's only ally was me, and they were somehow enemies with France and England at the same time. East Frisia was protected by England, so I changed my invasion plans to Oldenburg. England most likely knew my plan, which was why they protected East Frisia. I invaded Oldenburg and went to the Americas to know what my plan would be. but they hadn't even been discovered yet, so all I could see was Greenland. Prussia began invading Hamburg and England continued their war with Netherlands. I knew I had to beat England to invading Flanders, so that is exactly what I did. Denmark began mass recruiting, which was bad since I couldn't help them if war broke out. I waited for a bit longer until my invasion of Oldenburg was over. I then made a claim on Flanders and justified a war goal on them before going back to recruit more troops. I only had enough manpower to recruit 1K troops, but it was close to another 1K manpower, so I waited and recruited 1K troops again. Once I was done with that, I sent my troops into the North Sea to get to Flanders through the English Channel. But the English, seeing that I had declared war on Flanders, justified a war goal on me. Now I am cooked. I offered to become a vassal and for them to invade me when I migrated. They asked me where I was migrating to, and I obviously answered the Americas. I took over Flanders and started saving up money for my upcoming expedition. I'm gonna go take a nap, enjoy a time lapse with music, and I'll be back at the end. The fuck? I've barely slept for 6 minutes. How is it time already? Anyways, this is the end of my gameplay. I could have kept going, but I needed to do other stuff. It's almost the map of the 13 colonies, just missing some southern provinces. Over here is the map of Europe in case some of you were wondering. The Americas map is also here, mostly dominated by Spain just like it was historically. Remember to like and subscribe. See you in the next one.